Today on the Pro-Life Podcast, we're going to talk with Catherine Glenn Foster, President and CEO of Americans United for Life, her story and why I kind of think she's a hero. Also, the most extreme pro-abortion laws in the country. These things are insane. Let's get started. Happy Tuesday, y'all. We are joined by the amazing Catherine Glenn Foster, President and CEO of Americans United for Life. And I would go over the bio. It was extremely stout. The list of accomplishments is amazing. And we're going to put that link in the description because dang.
Dang, girl.
Quite the list of accomplishments.
Thank you.
So, other than mom status, what would be the, favorite, I checked this box?
Oh, that's hard. Maybe law school because I graduated from law school as a mom. So that was, that for sure. I don't know.
One of my
you're
favorites
not supposed to be able to do that.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
I've been told.
I had to choose. I can't have both law school and a daughter, but
how weird.
Yeah, somehow it worked out.
Overachiever.
Yeah.
That's
seriously.
a boss
How old was your daughter when you were in school?
When I started, she was a year and a half. So, yeah, she actually went to the Early Learning Center at Georgetown Law.
No.
And, she came to school with me every day.
So she went to law school, too.
Yeah.
Wow.
She actually stayed there a year longer than I did. So she was there for 4 years while I worked a couple blocks away. And, she loved it there. It was really sad to leave. It was just such a nice little early learning center community.
Oh, that's so fun.
Yeah.
See, this is what pro-lifers are supposed to do. It's amazing. So one of my favorite things in your bio was learning that you testified a lot in front of the Supreme Court. Is that right?
I have. But not the Supreme Court, Congress.
Congress. You testified in front of Congress. Yeah. That is so amazing. And then also, of course, maybe we should explain a little bit about what your actual job is as President and CEO of Americans United for Life, so people know what we're doing today.
Yeah. So sometimes my job is testifying before Congress, which is always fun. You get just a couple minutes to share your perspective and, your written statement with the members of Congress. But then they start asking you questions. And some of the questions are, actually really good. They're insightful and they're, hard-hitting. And they ask things that really make the American public sit back and think, wow, yeah, that's a really good point. Seems like those all come from the pro-life side. On the pro-abortion side, they just make things up and try to ask these gotcha questions. And it's a lot of fun trying to just verbally spar with them. I love it. It's kind of like when you go on, the old, Colbert Report or, Jon Stewart or something, and they're just trying to get you, and you're like, well, in fact, I do like people. Sorry for that.
Yeah. So you don't hate women, contrary to what others may say?
Shocker.
What?
Yes.
Question I was going to have. When you're testifying in the pro-abortion representatives and senators, do they discount you as a woman? I mean, how, do they get rude?
They call you a misogynist?
Yes. Yeah. Frequently, yes, they get rude. They definitely discount my opinion and, start talking about internalized misogyny and things like that. Yeah. Okay. I did not know that I, in fact, hate myself and all other women, but thank you for giving me that heads up.
Free therapy.
Yes.
From the
exactly.
See, all you needed was a man to tell you how you think.
I know, because I had no idea I need mansplaining in my life.
Thank you, Congress.
Yes.
I think that's
I just feel bad as a token white guy in this party.
We're saving that one.
Oh, that's hilarious. Okay, so for what does AUL do in a nutshell? And then we can talk more about how you got here.
Yeah, we draft and pass and, help pass and defend all of the laws that are helping to protect women and children. And we educate the American public about the truth about abortion and abortion law and what the court is doing and all these things that no one really seems to be clear on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how much do you travel?
A lot.
So you're all over the U.S.
All over the U.S., testifying, speaking, meeting with supporters because, all of our friends want to know what we're doing. Mm-hmm. And so that's always fun. I love it. I could not be more blessed and privileged because I love talking to people. I'm a lawyer, if that's not really clear. I like talking and I like listening. So I love just hearing people's stories and what got them interested and how they got to this point. Also their backstories. You know, I hear these incredible stories about people's passions and interests and families, and I just love it. You know, a job where you get to talk with people. What could be better?
Yeah,
I think because I like people. I like people. Is the moral of the story? Yeah.
Well, speaking of stories and
Yes.
people's stories, you have a good story as well. How you
Have
came
a story.
to the pro-life.
Yeah.
Well, end's good.
Yes.
How you came to your pro-life beliefs.
Yeah, I do. You know, everyone comes to the pro-life movement for different reasons. Some people, you know, have religious or moral convictions, or, you know, they think human rights, you know, of course we have to oppose abortion. Some people have, they considered abortion, they have an adoption in their family, maybe an issue at the end of life or some other bioethical issue. For me, I'm here because I had an abortion. It was the worst thing I've ever done. I grew up in a pro-life family, but we didn't really discuss abortion specifically. You know, I didn't really know what it was. So my best friend in middle school was pro-life. Her family was pro-life. St. John Newman, you know, it was a great place to grow up. But we didn't talk about actual abortion. So I didn't know what it was we were against. I thought we were just for life, which is sort of what, you know, we're all supposed to be, right? I didn't know that there was this horrible thing out there that I was supposed to be opposing. I didn't know it existed. And I didn't find out until I was 19. And at that point, I was an undergrad, had just gotten back from Christmas break, and had just a bit of a cold or a flu or something. So I went to the health center. And I thought they would give me some medicine and I'd be out the door. And instead they said, well, let's just check and see if you're pregnant before we give you this medicine. And I'm 19 years old. I think I'm invincible. And so I said, no one's ever asked me that. Why would I have to take a pregnancy test? Of course I'm not pregnant. Let's give me the prescription. But they said, just take this test. And I stepped to the bathroom and took it. And they sat me down and they said, it's positive, you know, you're pregnant. And, you know, what do you do with that? I was shocked. I could not believe it. 19 years old, I'm an only child. My mom was a single mom. And I was just, I felt very protective. I couldn't imagine the thought of that look in her eyes when she found out what I'd been doing and that I was pregnant. I didn't want to let her down. So the nurses at the health center, they were not the most helpful. They didn't say, here's what it can look like. Here's what we do with your classes. You can take this time off. We'll do this with your scholarship. Here's what housing looks like. Here's what the meal plan looks like, all that. There was none of it. They just said, well, here's a phone if you need to call someone, because they could see I was shocked. You know, there was no arm around me. There was no one to hold my hand. It was just, there's a phone and then next patient. Wow. So I was left alone. And so I went back to my dorm room, told the father, went back to my dorm room and just searched online, what do I do now that I'm pregnant? And I went to school outside Atlanta. So when I looked up pregnant, what do I do? What showed up were Atlanta abortion centers. There was no pro-life center that showed up, nothing like that, no pregnancy help, just here's a list of places where you can get an abortion. And so I felt lost. I thought, okay, there's basically two choices here. I can either tell my mom, and who knows what happens, but I know how sad she will be, or I can go to this abortion facility and find out what next. So I made an appointment for that Saturday. I knew that I couldn't push it because I was already bonding. I mean, I'm wearing my boyfriend's oversized Timberland sweatshirt, walking around campus for that week, actually talking with her and saying, like, it's okay, it'll be okay. But I went to the appointment that Saturday.
Not knowing what an abortion was.
Oh, no, I had no idea. I had no idea. Like, I made the appointment. I sort of knew they might do an abortion, but I had no idea what was going to happen at all. So I go in, there's maybe a dozen people in the waiting room, and they're chatting amongst themselves, and some of them have had 5, 6, 7 abortions. And so I think, okay, this all feels very wrong, but okay, let's see what happens next. And they give you this pill to take. And so I took that, and they take you back into the ultrasound room. And of course, we know they have to do an ultrasound. They have to check how far along you are and what procedure to use and make sure the pregnancy is not ectopic and find out how much to charge you. But they do the ultrasound, and there's the screen with the image of your child, right here, just a foot or two away from your face. And so I said, okay, here for information. Let's turn that towards me. I'd like to see my whatever's there. And they said no. They said that it was against policy to turn the screen and let me see. So that's actually still one of my biggest regrets, that I've never seen that one image of my first child. Praise God, now more and more states make sure that we do get to see our very own medical records, which seems like a no-brainer. But at the time they said no. And so they just shuffled me over to the next room, and I'm on the table where they're going to perform the abortion. And I just knew that I couldn't do it because nothing had felt right. I kept asking questions, and they wouldn't give me any answers. It was just this assembly line process, go through, lie down, you'll be out of the door in an hour. And I thought, this is horrible. I can't do this. I can't do this to myself. I can't do this to my child. I can't believe women are actually going through with this. It just felt so wrong. And so I called and said, this is wrong for me. Keep the money. I had already scraped it together, whatever. I need to get back out of here and go back to campus and make some decisions and probably call my mom. But instead of just letting me go, they said, nope, you're already in here. Stay still. And they called for help. And I ended up with a worker, one on each leg and one on each arm.
Oh, God. Oh, Catherine.
Holding me down, and they forcibly aborted my baby.
I'm so sorry.
It was horrible. It was the most traumatic thing I can imagine. It was horrible. I was screaming or trying to scream. They were trying to shut me up. And all I wanted was to get out of there.
Yeah.
I didn't even get a chance to talk with the abortionist. He had just come in the door, and by that point they already have me down. It was over so fast.
That's horrific. I'm so sorry.
It was horrible. And a couple minutes later it's over, and and I felt broken. They have me move over to this little recovery room, and they gave me a little thing of juice, and I just sat there crying, not wanting to leave because I knew it was the last time I'd be in a building with my baby. Right. I just stayed there in that recovery room until they kicked me out, and I went back to campus and stayed in bed for a week and canceled everything and couldn't figure out how to get up and move on. And a couple weeks after that, I'm a mama's girl, so I told my mom anyway. It just kind of spilled out because she was telling me about her good friend who had a daughter who was pregnant. Oh. And so I just said, yeah, a lot of people getting pregnant recently, right? And she's my mom. She knows me. She knows everything before I even tell her. Mm-hmm. And she said, Catherine, is there something you want to tell me? And I said, yeah. And I told her the whole story. And of course, she was disappointed in me, but she was so supportive and loved me. And she said, I'm so sorry that you made that decision because I would have loved that baby. And, we would have built such a home and a life. And instead I threw it away just because I didn't have enough. I was too prideful, and I didn't have enough faith in my family, honestly. So she found me counseling at a local pregnancy center. And I went all summer, and actually that woman is incredible. I'm still friends with her on Facebook, and we keep up. And she is just she is such a godsend. She's amazing.
That's awesome.
So I found that. I found some healing, and then I thought I'll just continue on with my life, I guess. And so I wanted to do international work, and I started doing that. But there was always this like tug on my heart, this voice of God speaking and saying, no, you need to do something about this.
Right.
And eventually that led me to first take the LSATs and then apply for law school and then go into Georgetown. And it was while I was sitting there in orientation. They have different orientation activities. There was like a bike along the Potomac Canal. I didn't do that one. I did go to the National Arboretum and clean vines off the trees there. That one was very neat. And then there was a talk on healthcare law. And so I'm thinking, healthcare law, that sounds very interesting. It probably is like bioterrorism, like 24 and Jack Bauer, and very cool. So I go into this talk. Yeah, and I'm front row. I'm like, let's talk about national
Our younger
security.
listeners are missing out.
I know
Go watch 24.
It's amazing. In fact, I just saw an advert the other day on Amazon Prime. Yeah, the movie. Yes.
The first couple seasons. After that got a little weird, but yeah.
I stuck with it. It was amazing. But that's what I thought this would be. I'm like, okay, this is going to be amazing, and there'll be spies. Okay, I was wrong. Healthcare law was very boring. I'm sorry. It was not an interesting conversation. But as I'm sitting there in the front row, I felt it. I heard it. No, you are here. You're here in law school to protect women like you and to save babies. And at the time, I did not know there was a pro-life movement. I had not put it together that my post-abortion counseling was at a pregnancy center. I didn't know what they were. So I was very clueless. But a couple weeks later, I'm thinking I have to like start this thing on my own. I have to tell people like, what's abortion? Like, I don't know.
There's no one else doing that.
I'm such a baby. And so it was embarrassing. But yeah, so I see this at the student org fair. There's this table, and it's a pro-life table. I'm like, there's people like me who know the truth about abortion. It's amazing. And so I started talking to them, and they connected me with pro-life groups, and all of a sudden I found this home, these welcoming arms, and I found a place where I could share my story and work with all these other people, hundreds of thousands of other people who know the truth. And so having that has been the biggest blessing. It's incredible.
Wow.
Yeah. So everything I've done since has been relating to abortion pretty much. All the classes at Georgetown were about abortion. I made them all read like hundreds of pages about abortion and abortion law. Every paper I wrote, I was doing 5 paper classes a semester, and it would be like, let's talk about abortion in this state. Let's talk about abortion in this context. And the professors were like, please stop. I did not stop. And then I worked for 7 years with Alliance Defending Freedom, and then left there in 2016, started a law firm to continue litigating the frontline abortion issues. I also served as executive director of Euthanasia Prevention Coalition USA, dealing with euthanasia and assisted suicide, and also served as senior legal fellow at Charlotte Lozier Institute. So that's a little snippet of what I've done since, but it's basically nonstop. Everything I do seems to relate to saving lives and protecting women.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
A little bit of a nutshell.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're a superwoman.
Totally. Yeah. Heroes and villains
dedicated.
typically have a very similar origin story where they start
Right.
out as a victim that experiences a trauma, and it's the
Right.
choice they make after that.
Exactly.
So thank you for choosing hero.
Thank you. Yeah. You see this after abortion. People either, harden their heart because
Right.
it's the pain is so great. And so a lot of times you see people become these virulent pro-abortion
Yeah, we've seen those.
activists. Yeah, a few.
Yeah.
And then, so many people, though, in the pro-life movement, they're here because they have an abortion story and they found healing and they're working to redeem that choice and, and impact the world positively through that loss of life. Yeah.
And one of the things I love about your work and your story is connecting why we respect human life in the womb to the sick and the elderly and the infirm. And that's something, we here at Texas Right to Life very much firmly embrace. And so having pro-life organizations and like the Euthanasia Prevention Coalition, which we were very familiar with, and just putting it, the need for pro-life attorneys, from beginning to end. It is just, people think about the pro-life movement and it's, abortion context. Well, what can I do? No, there are other areas where human life is threatened that you can step in and save lives.
Absolutely. Human life is threatened throughout the spectrum of life. And our work, people talk about intersectionality. We embody that. We work with so many different groups. Everything that we do connects to so many different issues. And in fact, one of the many things I did in law school, I did about a dozen outside of actual class activities. One of them was that I ran the school paper, and one of my editors actually said that I had opened his mind to the pro-life issue because he saw that I was running everything. I was running the pro-life group, obviously, but I was also running the parents group because my daughter, who's now 15, was a year and a half when I started law school. And so I immediately got involved. I'm like, let's all get together, pregnant and parenting students. Let's be a support network. And so we all had a group, and we would get together and bring the kids sometimes. And so he said, I love that you're supporting children after they're born too. He had that misconception that we only care about birth. We're pro-birth. And that after birth, we don't know what happens. Apparently, pregnancy centers don't provide diapers and resources and training and all these other things. But
parenting classes, babysitting, none of it. Don't provide any of it.
I know, but people don't know that, right? They're like I was, no idea what a pregnancy center even is.
Well, they're watching the podcast, so now they have no excuse.
Yes.
Know now.
Yes.
Lots of resources available. But he didn't know that. And so he said it was amazing to see that someone who was pro-life also supported the babies after they're born, and the moms and the dads and everyone else in the community. So, yeah.
Back to one element of your story, the arriving at the health center at the school.
Yeah.
That is such a missed opportunity for pro-life activism and to in educating administration and higher ed, because you're right, that's such a critical spot. If they had made this, offered some options, or just like, here's one path, and this is, normalized. Well, we all know there's pregnant women walking around campus.
Of course there are.
So
Yes.
what do you see them continuing? No, that's why the largest age group of women who have abortions are that 18 to 24 mark. And that is such a great way to, at least cause pregnant women to take a step back, to see, okay, there's some glimmer of a different option here.
Right.
We could just explore that.
Yeah. Well, can I make a shameless plug for our student programs really quick? So
Absolutely.
this is why we have student activism programs on college campuses, med schools, law schools. One of the reasons Catherine is here right now is she's on tour in Texas speaking at law schools and med schools. But even in our undergrad programs, we encourage the students to do information tables on campus and to educate the whole student body that there are pregnancy centers nearby. Sometimes they will investigate the local student health clinic and see what would happen if they went in pregnant. What kind of referral are they going to get? And then petition that they get the right kind of referral to the right kind of help. Yes, we need more of all of this.
Yeah. When I was in college, so I'm from a small town, and so this might not work in Houston, but in smaller towns it could work. Our university actually partnered with the pregnancy center, and so the pregnancy center was supplying free pregnancy tests with a little business card and everything to the health center, and it was our job as the pro-life group to make sure that those got from point A to point B. And so it was like they were actually working hand in hand together. I'm sure in a bigger town, like if University of Houston did that, I'm sure there would be an uproar. But it's one of those things that's like, that is a very easy opportunity that, people who were in your situation could have a completely different outcome.
Absolutely.
Exactly. That's something that we and others are working on so that we can work with the administrations and the health centers so that, these girls and women actually do get the facts and so that there are resources, so that there's a plan so that when a young woman gets pregnant, because they sometimes will. I know I was at a very small Christian college campus and it happened to me. So if it can happen to me there, it can happen to anyone, anywhere. So making sure that there is some path forward that's known. So there's groups working on that. I was just talking with a student here in Texas. She's working on that as one of her projects to have a plan with the administration so that when that happens, when a student gets pregnant, that there's a plan for her classes and a plan for her student aid or her scholarships or whatever that might be.
Right. She can trust that she won't get kicked out. Yeah.
Exactly. That's critical. And actually, a few years ago, I guess like 4 years ago now, I happened to be back on my undergrad campus. I was there for a conference and I was driving by. I was so excited to be there. And all of a sudden I drove by the health center and I slammed on the brakes. I just stopped. I thought it all flooded back to me. I hadn't even put it together that would be there. So I was driving by. I actually went in and I asked them, what would you do now? This is what happened to me. What would you do now? And at first they thought I was a plant. And I was like trying to, do a sting operation and so on. But they did say that they would refer the young woman based on her desires. I think they still were a little suspicious of me. We have work to do even there, but
that must have been a rude awakening for them.
Exactly. Yeah. So we have work to do, but that's something that we are very committed to because there's no choice if people don't have the information.
Yeah. Certainly.
Well, speaking of information, we still have a lot to cover today, but before we can do that, we've got other information that I think Nathan is going to drop in here for you guys watching at home. So Nathan, do your thing. Texas Right to Life is facing 14 lawsuits from Planned Parenthood and the abortion industry. They're suing us because we helped pass the Texas Heartbeat Act. And they're trying to scare us pro-lifers into backing down. Please join us in the fight against Planned Parenthood and donate to protect the Texas Heartbeat Act. You can fight for the unborn and build a pro-life Texas that values every human life. Go to texasrighttolife.com/lawsuit to make your contribution. Every cent will help, and it's greatly appreciated.
Have a child in high school? Register them now for Team Life Camp coming up on April 1st weekend in Kerrville, Texas. They'll have a blast with canoeing, archery, hiking, and much more, all while learning how to better defend the unborn from the crazy agenda of the left. But hurry, the deadline is coming up quick, so grab your ticket now. Every life is sacred, and every life is worthy of protection. Register now at teamlifecamp.com.
Well, welcome back. So we wanted to talk also, since you have the national platform here, what kind of crazy laws all these other states are throwing out there. I feel like I get a new email and alert every other day of some weird bill that is the most horrifying thing I've ever seen.
It's always California, too.
Yeah, kind of.
They make the short list.
So
yeah, there's actually whole books dedicated to the weird laws in the states. It'll be like, listen to these crazy laws. Can you believe this is illegal or this is legal? And a lot of them are funny, but some of them aren't. Some of them are just so far out there and such an abomination that they really just should give all of us chills and send us all straight to the State House in protest. One of those types of bills that we've been seeing recently is bills that would allow for infanticide. Actual infanticide. Now, the clearest example of this is, sadly, where I currently live, apparently not for much longer if this goes through. I'm going to be moving back across the river, back to Virginia. God's country, but I guess other than Texas.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
You triggered us all at that point.
Sorry about that, Lone Star State. But Virginia's not half bad. Clearly better than Maryland if we get this kind of bill through. And it's interesting, actually. The two sides of D.C. have been in this kind of disgusting battle on infanticide in the last few years, because all of this idea started off, in modern law with actually Governor Northam in Virginia. And, all these abortionists in the abortion industry, they're all reading from the same hymnal, singing from the same hymnal. Right. They all are reading from the same playbook, believing the same thing, but Governor Northam actually said it. He said what no one else would say, but everyone on that side was thinking. And so he was on a radio show, and I think one of us has the quote, but he basically said, if there's a child who's delivered and unwanted, or there's some kind of medical, diagnosis, then, deliver the child, keep the child comfortable, and then the doctor and the family will have a discussion about what comes next and whether or not to do anything to even revive this human being. So he said that. He's a pediatrician. A delegate there in Virginia admitted that a bill that she introduced would allow for infanticide. And then this bill,
Maryland.
In Maryland, yes. It defines, it says that, in fact, there's a quote on this, a quote from the bill. I think you have it, but it basically says that you're protected if you neglect a perinatal child.
Yeah, it says a perinatal, this section may not be construed to authorize any form of investigation or penalty for a person experiencing perinatal death related to a failure to act.
Right.
So perinatal, someone define what perinatal is for our viewers. What is the timeline there?
That's the question, right?
It's undefined.
It's usually at least 28 days, right?
At least.
I think some states might
Up to
have
20,
varying
yeah.
definitions. Yeah, but it is, but it's not defined in these bills.
Right.
After birth,
Right.
and perinatal death related to a failure to act. Well, that could be a botched abortion, a born alive infant after that. It could mean I'm just not going to feed
neglect.
this child. I'm going to starve this child to death. And this bill in Maryland, not only are you not, we don't even get to investigate. That's insane. That is just the idea of how cheap human life is to people.
And if you prosecute, then you're liable.
Exactly.
That's in this bill. It's crazy. Up to a month after birth, and whether it's a born alive situation, it's the opposite of a BIPA, a Born Alive Infant Protection Act, and the opposite of that, whether the infant is born alive during abortion, or the parents are just busy playing video games, or we've read these horror stories about parents who are maybe on drugs or whatever, and they just aren't caring for their child.
And now CPS can't do anything about it.
Nothing at all.
And so part of this bill also, so you're a police officer or you're a DA who, okay, yeah, I've got a 3-week-old baby here who's dead. I'm about to launch an investigation to see what happened to this child. If a person may bring a cause of actions for damages, means I will sue you if the person was subject to unlawful arrest or criminal investigation after experiencing a perinatal death.
Yeah.
I mean, it defies all logic.
So actually, I would argue that is logically consistent with the abortion position.
You're
that
right.
If you say that life at its earliest stages has no value, where do we draw that line?
Well, and philosophers like Peter Singer out of Yale, Princeton, I believe. He's been talking about this for forever, and people say, "Oh no, there's no extremists out there who would draw those conclusions. It's the moment of birth that you are deemed your rights or whatever." But I'm like, no. Actually, in high academia, people have been talking about this for a long time.
And for
that
toddlers.
the next
They drag
step
it out to as far as
is that,
2
years.
we can't draw the line at birth because what's different between the day before birth and the day of their birth? And at least they're logically consistent, but in this horrible satanic way, they're saying it's okay to kill someone up until 2 years old.
Right.
And he lectures all over the U.S. about this.
Exactly.
It's insane.
They just keep redefining and redefining. We've even seen that recently recently with conception. Now I can't even say conception anymore because they said, well, conception isn't really fertilization; it's implantation. So I have to say fertilization.
Pregnancy begins actually 10 days after you got pregnant.
Exactly.
What?
Good to know. That's not really how this works.
You're only fake pregnant for 10 days.
Oh dear.
But there's one point in time where a human
Been mostly
being
pregnant.
is created. Yeah.
Mostly pregnant all day.
Mostly pregnant all day.
Exactly. But there's one point in time where it actually makes sense to draw the line, and that is fertilization, when the human being is created. Everything after that is a circumstance, whether it's implantation or, they try to redefine the birth process, and that's how you get partial birth abortion. At what point are you born?
Horrible.
How much of the baby has to be, still in the womb. And so now it's logically consistent, as you say, but it's sick, and it should make every right-thinking American absolutely nauseated to think that this is going on in our nation.
Yeah.
And this is what the left is doing. So that's why the Hispanic community is, the more we get the word out about what being a progressive or what being Democrat actually means, they're coming over and to the Republican side, because it's just common sense. But I'll tell you a quick war story. You said something happens in the birth canal. Oh my gosh. So
Wait a minute, is this going to be TMI?
Come on.
No. It's a war story. So I think it was when Texas was debating the sonogram law, and there was this we were in a committee hearing, and this crazy guy, okay, so he's testifying, just, members of the public. You don't have to be lobbyists and lawyers and fancy people to testify in front of the legislature. And so this guy was older, white male. Okay, we get blamed for that all the time, but this is actually in favor. This guy was talking about in favor of abortion, and they asked that question of him. The panel asked that question of him. Is like, okay, well, what's the difference between day before and day after birth? And his answer was something happens in the birth canal to change a fetus into a person through the birth canal.
It's magic.
It's magic.
Wow.
That's exactly what it was.
Magical birth.
Yeah, it's like we're all just like, oh, okay.
That is straight science right there.
Actually, there's this pro-life comedian who's done a YouTube comedy routine on that, and she literally put animated pixie dust on this cartoon of a birth canal. Google it. It's hilarious.
It's on our website. Go to TexasRightToLife.com and search magical birth canal.
Fantastic.
I'm going to laugh when that query
I
comes
never
across
used
the record.
Careful where you go. I guess on Google, if you search
don't search that on
you
Google.
might get other weird things.
It's very funny, though. It's totally safe.
We'll just link it.
G-rated.
We'll link in the
Yes.
description. It'll be fun.
Yeah,
but
it's good.
so it was spring break, I think, when I saw an alert come across on this Maryland bill, and I was like, okay, legal minds guys, am I reading this right? Like, does this look like what I think it looks like? And then a week goes by, and California is doing what California does.
Yeah. So
being crazy again.
this specific part of the bill is the most important. I'm just going to read it. It says, notwithstanding any other law, a person should not be subject to civil or criminal liability or penalty or otherwise deprived of their rights based on actions or omissions with respect to their pregnancy or actual potential or alleged pregnancy, including blah, 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 perinatal death.
Jeez.
So you can omit to care for a child after birth, and if they die, you're not liable. And then there's other same things similar to Maryland. A police officer, a CPS cannot intervene, or they could be sued. You have the right to sue these people for doing investigative work to figure out why this baby died.
So we should expect New York to be shortly trying to one-up California, because that's what
I'm
they
sure.
do.
Of course.
So what's your answer to, okay, well, what happens to children who are unwanted that we give birth and they're unwanted? What do you do with there?
Well, thankfully we have safe haven laws.
Yeah,
Who
right.
wants to talk about that?
Yeah.
Well,
I do.
This is how we do things in Texas.
Emily loves baited questions. Tell us all about safe haven laws, Emily.
I mean, that's just that's a farce. It's not. Every state in the nation has what we call safe haven or baby Moses laws, where there are emergency responders, emergency places, a hospital, fire departments that you can drop a newborn child off at, and no there's no penalties attached to that. There's no criminal penalties attached.
There's no even questions asked.
Right. It is
you
just
drop your child and no more contact if you don't want. You can just move on with your life. It is a godsend for women in very desperate situations.
And so it's not the answer. You have a 3-week-old, 4-week-old, and baby, and realize I can't do this. Maybe for there's mental the mom is having postpartum depression or other mental aspects or financial problems. The answer, like these crazy people want, is well, just kill your baby. Right. No, that's not the answer.
I mean, what are they going to do when they're single parent? Like if their first child is like my first child and super colicky baby, and you haven't slept in a week,
right?
Like.
That's very stressful.
It's very stressful.
Need support.
And people will lean towards doing really terrible things because, well, it's an option now.
Yeah.
Right.
It's legal.
It's illegal.
You won't get in trouble.
Why would that be illegal? This is insanity. We live in clown world.
And people think that what's legal is moral when there are resources. We have community resources to support a woman who's in this situation so that she can keep the baby if she wants to, because we want that to be an option for her. But then we also have resources if she doesn't want to and doesn't feel like she can. Those are options. And the beautiful thing about all of this is that human rights are not subject to wantedness.
Right.
Exactly.
It doesn't matter whether or not you're wanted. There's a right to life. It's a human right. So, none of this should be on the table. It's pretty simple.
One of the, themes I think we've kind of brought out in this, in our episode today is if you are struggling with a pregnancy, an unexpected pregnancy, if you think that someone in your life is struggling with an unwanted pregnancy or an unexpected pregnancy, say something. There are so many resources and just a word of encouragement of, hey, let's look at our options to know that you're loved and cherished. Like that's the takeaway, and I encourage all of our listeners to look for those opportunities around you.
We have a map and a database on our website. If you want to search it, we're going to put it in the description of this podcast, so you can go ahead and click that link, find locations near you for your friends, for your family, for volunteering. They need help. I mean, this is such a huge problem, and these guys are, oh my gosh, they're overwhelmed sometimes with the stories they're getting and the cases they're dealing with. So they need volunteer manpower.
It's so true. This is a lot of bad news, so I have some good news.
Cool.
So one of the students that we worked with several years ago at a college campus, she's amazing. Shout out to Abby. She called me one day out of the blue long after graduating and said, oh my gosh, Veronica, I have to tell you. And I was like, oh, it's so great to hear from you. She said that she's been living with some extended family members for a while. And one day they all woke up and there was a baby on their porch. A baby on their front porch.
Wow.
And for a few hours, they were really not sure whose baby this was. I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it. So they were like, oh my God, a baby. What do we do? So they started taking care of it, and all the cousins and the grandmas and the uncles were like, oh my God, a baby. So they were like having a party, trying to figure out whose baby this is. And then they all started to figure out that it was like a cousin of a cousin situation. This poor, tragic woman had been addicted to hard drugs for a long time and living on the streets by choice, even though that she had a lot of resources available. She was just not ready to be helped. And so she had multiple abortions, but this time she chose life and she dropped the baby off. And they did not know the baby's name, so they named him. The family who owned the porch named him, and then, but they were trying to figure out, well, how do we reunite mom and baby, if that's a good thing or maybe not? How do we do a legal adoption? How do we do this? So they called the police, and actually Abby was calling me like, what do we do? And I was like, how about you start with reporting it? Like, just report it. Right. And they were like, okay. So that was like, at least there's a state record in case someone wants to claim the baby. Like, you have a record to start the process. And so they did that. And then they finally got a hold of the mom because she doesn't have a cell phone. And she was like, no, I can't do this. And they were like, completely understood. So then they started making the process legal, like to legally adopt the child. And it was just amazing to see that she made this wonderful choice of dropping her baby off in the right place. And also, I want to highlight the fact that she knew this family would love this baby, and the only reason she knew that is because they had told her as much. They made it clear for a whole generation or more. We are pro-life. We love babies. If you ever get into trouble, come to us for help. And my parents raised me and my siblings like that too. And I think that we all need to be more vocal about the fact that, like, if you're ever in a hard spot, like, come here, okay, take a shower. We've got food for you. Like, this is the way real community should be. And so she knew where to go without a moment's hesitation. And, like, we can all do that. We can just tell our kids, our cousins, our friends, our church members, like, if you ever need to talk to someone, you come to me. Like, that's what pro-lifers should be doing. So, yeah, shout out to Abby and her family. It's amazing.
That just really highlights the importance of speaking out, and it draws a very clear distinction of whenever you talk about these issues, people know who to go to for help. If you do not talk about this issue, if you do not talk about life, you don't even have to necessarily, please talk about abortion, but, like, if you talk about life and valuing life, people know, okay, this is the person I need to go to for help. So I just think that draws a very clear distinction between what you faced and how you were a victim in that situation, and this woman who also had hard circumstances, but she knew, I can go to this family and they're going to help me. So we're almost out of time, but I do, since we're just on this really positive vibe here, what advice can you give to somebody who's in that situation, maybe a similar situation you are in? What do you want to tell them right now?
If you're in a situation like mine, I would say trust. You know, it may not be the same person that I would have trusted. I needed to trust my mom, and that was, you know, she was a safe space for me. Other people, you know, not everyone can, tragically, but there's someone in your life that you can trust. There's always a place you can go. And, you know, we're living in a different world. Back then I was looking up on, like, Ask Jeeves or something. I don't even know what it was. It was a long time ago. Now we can just go online and find all these resources, whether they're from the government, from pregnancy centers, from community organizations. There are so many things out there, you know, organizations that are ready and excited to help you and are just going to welcome you in and be so happy for you and to just help start you on a good path. So trust the people around you, trust someone, you know, whoever it is. It doesn't have to be everyone, but there's someone you can go to, and choose someone who will cherish you and cherish life. For the people around that person, or, you know, you may not even know that you're around that person yet. You know, you may just be, you know, living in your community. You may be Abby's family, just saying, we're pro-life, we love babies. But that's what we all need to be doing. That's the message that we need to be sending out into the world, so that that young woman in our life who does find out that she's pregnant, whether it's our neighbor or relative or church or, you know, work or school, or it could be anyone, but so that people know that you are that safe place and you're the person that she should trust. That's really critical. You know, I've had people in my life since that have come to me and said, I'm pregnant. I'm in school. I'm scared. I'm in a bad relationship. What do I do next? And so, and it's been such an honor to be able to help them through that and get them the right resources that they need and just love on them and their baby.
Yep.
Yeah.
Preach.
Yeah. Be that helping hand, and, you know, put your arm around them and just say, you know, who do you need to talk to? Let's make the call. Let's tell people. Let's make a plan. Yeah.
Awesome. Catherine, thank you so much for hanging out with us. We need to do this more.
Absolutely.
So let's get lunch and actually record some more.
Oh,
So we're going to do part 2 for next week.
Break for lunch.
Next week, again, Catherine Glenn Foster, who's going to join us again. So we will continue this conversation, but for next week's recording. So thank you so much for watching. We could not do this without your support. We love you. Go out, save some lives, change the world. Have a great day. See you next week.